Hi there, Sandy here. Welcome to another Friday Findings video at keepsakecrafts.net. Today I'm answering some of the questions that I get on my YouTube channel. Today's questions are all about supplies and finishing your bead stringing. So the first question I have is from many of you on many of the videos have asked me about the supplies. Where can I find this? Where can I find that? And I wanted to let you know, in case you don't know already, that every single one of my project videos and Friday Findings videos has an accompanying blog post. And that blog post will always have usually a little bit more information, things I figured out after making the project or after putting together the video. And I will always have a supply list with links to products. So all you need to do whenever you watch one of my videos is you can click on the little I in the upper right, and that will bring you to a video card that will link to my blog post. Or if you just go to the description box, open that up, click show more, and there will always be a link to the blog post there, and there you will find, like I said, more information and supply lists and product links. Now next, I have questions from several folks on my Bead Stringing 101, Beading 101 Bead Stringing Basics video. Lauren Aline, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, said, I wish it showed her finishing the necklace. I have a hard time getting rid of the extra space between beads at the finishing part because I'm trying to hide the crimp. In 1994, Abby Girl asked something similar. Do you have a video on attaching jump rings? I don't have a problem with the first one, but the end one drives me crazy. How do you get the beads and jump rings pulled down without a gap in the beads and crimp bead? Is there a way to do it? Thanks for any help. And also Glenda Redknock said, on the two strands you showed, there was a length that had a space at the end, and you put a tube with a jump ring and squeezed the tube, but you didn't show how the beads got to the end of the wire. So can you tell me how you got everything nice and tight to the ends of the necklace? And really, you are all asking the same question, which is how do you finish up a piece of bead stringing? So here I have just some random, I just went into my blue box, pulled out a bunch of beads and threw them on a piece of stringing wire. Here I have a crimp, and it's covered with a crimp cover and a jump ring. And so here's the end, and so we'll pretend this is the end of our bracelet or necklace or piece of stringing that we want to make. Now one of the things all of those questions asked was how do you get it nice and tight? And one thing that you want to remember is that you don't really want it tight. It is okay for a little bit of the wire to be exposed. I mean, obviously you don't want, a half an inch or something of wire showing, but it's okay for a little bit, especially if the piece is a bracelet where it's going to be in a very tight curve. Let me show you what I mean here. All right, so let's pretend this is curving around to this side, and I'm going to pull these up tight. Now when I straighten this out, this is quite rigid. I don't know if you could see that. So if I were to tighten this even further and then try to wear it as a bracelet, you can see it almost doesn't even want to curve. It's just very stiff. It doesn't hang gracefully. So having it super tight, it's actually overrated. You don't have to have it tight. You can have a little bit, even, this much, 1/16 of an inch of wire showing. You want it to be able to see the difference here where this is moving and it's graceful. You need to give your beads a little bit of room to move. That's the first thing, is forget about having it super tight. Of course we want it neat. We don't want a lot of exposed wire. So just like with any crimped wire design, we're going to slide on a crimp. And then here I have a soldered closed jump ring. You can use split jump rings, but it's nice to use one that's soldered because if it's split, inevitably the split's going to find the wire. And then the wire goes back through that crimp. This is where you have some decisions to make. How tight do I pull this? Now if we pull it as tight as we can get it, again, like I said, it's very stiff. It doesn't drape nicely. You don't want to make it that tight. So I'm going to actually loosen this up. First of all, if you're making a bracelet, it's a good idea to just curve the beads, and that will actually build in some of the extra wire that you will need to get a nice graceful curve. And then I'm going to take my crimping pliers, so grab the crimp in there, and then you can actually slide it a little. I like to often slide it just a little closer to the jump ring, so I have less of that wire exposed. Give it a good squeeze, and then always, always, always give it a tug. Now you can grab that crimp in the other end of your pliers, which is just an oval shape, and then it will fold it. And that just makes it smaller and more discreet. And then there's your piece, all crimped and nice and neat. And you can cover that with a crimp cover and trim your wire. Now at this point, I want to address another question. And this is from Ms. Vrizchika, I believe. Sorry about these pronunciations. On my leafy green serpentine necklace. She says, you make everything look so simple. Well, thank you. That's because I've done a lot of it. Anybody who's done something with lots of practice does eventually make it look simple, whether it's throwing a 40-yard pass or doing a plie or crimping a bead for a piece of jewelry. So she goes on to say, just wondering, is there a reason I see some other crafters threading through the crimp bead and then back through the top beads? They usually do that before clamping on the crimp bead. I was just wondering if there's a reason why. And what she means is, all right, so I've gone through the crimp the second time and then going back through some of these other beads, like this. Well, there's one good reason you might do this, and that's if you don't have a crimp cover to cover this crimp, that will sort of bury the wire in these beads. And so I can throw it in here. I'm going to pull this up tight, and notice I ended with in kind of a largish bead. And I'm going to pull it up snug to that and trim it. And now that wire is never going to poke anybody because it's inside that large bead. Some people are of the mistaken impression that by doing that, they are making their project more secure. But that's not true. Once you've done your crimping, I almost always tell you, give it a tug and check. And see, that came out. I should have done that before. Look at that. I should have done that before I trimmed it. I'm glad that I checked it now, and this isn't a real piece of jewelry or I'd be in pain. Give it a good tug before you finish off your piece of jewelry, and if it holds tight, you can trim that wire like I did down here, right at the crimp, and then cover it with a crimp cover. And no amount of wire that's buried in the other beads is going to save your piece of jewelry from falling apart if your crimp isn't secure. So always make sure that you give it that yank and that tug before you do any trimming of the wire. You saw my example right there. It wasn't secure and it came apart. And it wouldn't have mattered if the wire was back through these three or all the way to the other end of the bracelet. It would have eventually come undone. The reason people send it through is either to keep the wire from scratching somebody, which is perfectly valid and fine, or because they think it's going to make their beading more secure, which it is not. Always double check and make sure that your crimps are super secure. Thanks so much for asking questions on my videos. We have a really nice community going on here with folks answering questions, and besides me and folks with answers that I wouldn't have thought of. It's really wonderful. So feel free to ask questions, contribute answers to other people's, and we'll all learn and grow from what everybody has to contribute. So, like I mentioned before, if you're interested in the supplies I used, click on the little I in the upper right or the link in the description box to go to my blog post. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and take a peek at my Patreon page for how you can get great rewards and help support my video tutorials. Happy creating. Bye-bye.